Welcome, Senior Housing Forum readers and viewers today. I'm so honored to be able to announce that our Empower Women in Senior Living initiative is welcoming our board chairperson, Jayne Sallerson. Jayne is the Chief Operating Officer for the charter senior living communities out of Chicago. And part of our Empower for the folks that have watched us is really to tell the stories of women in senior living and where they came from and how they got to this great leadership role today. And we hope that these stories inspire you as well. So I, again, am so honored to welcome Jayne. I've known Jayne for almost 2 decades when she was with Somerville and then went on to have just an amazing career. So Jayne, I would hope that you could share with our readers and our viewers kind of where you came from to step into senior housing and what inspired you to create a path of leadership to your Chief Operating Officer role.
Well, thank you for making me your chair, and I think it's so important that women have a voice in business, but specifically senior housing. 80% of our employees are women, and as I've grown through the ranks of senior housing, and it predominantly has been men who have been in the C-suite, and I think it's starting to change a little bit. You're starting to see more CEOs that are women. But I was always in sales my whole life and in healthcare, and I kind of stumbled upon assisted living. I was cold calling. I worked for a group purchasing organization, and I cold called on an assisted living community and met a regional director of operations, and a couple months later he called me and he said, "Hey, how'd you like to become a regional director of sales for senior housing?" And I said, "I don't really know how to sell senior housing." And that's how I kind of got in the business. And it's an interesting industry. It just kind of bites you and you just can't get out of it. I'm proud to be able to work in an industry that I can wake up every morning and say, I love what I do, and I love that I impact people. And I just not only impact residents, I impact their families, I impact associates. So I'm just honored to be in the industry, and I think there's so many successful women out there that you have to kind of learn how do I get to the next level.
Well, I love your story, Jayne, because you chose a path through Emeritus and building that sales organization and sales and marketing where you really became known, and I thought it was a brilliant way of touching the lives of our prospects, not just with a phone call or an email, but to truly make a meaningful experience by really asking and listening. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because it led you to a great tool.
Right.
So would you speak to that and what inspired you to really take that on as recreating sales for senior housing?
I think, there was a lot. I got in the industry in 1998, and everyone thought I'm just going to build these beautiful buildings and everyone's going to move into them. And what no one anticipated was seniors don't want to move. We're in an industry and we have a product that most people don't want. They need it, and it's the last thing that they want to do. And I think our industry became very traditional transactional sales. They all, if you go back to the history of senior living, most of the people that started companies came from the nursing home industry, which is very much more order taking, and a lot of the sales training came from that. And it was really my exposure with David Smith from Sherpa, who really developed prospect-centered selling, which is really an effective way to don't go after the sale right from the start. These people are resistant to start. So how do I open them up? How do I get to know them? What's their passion, or what has their passion in life been? And what are they proud of? And where'd they meet their husband? And where'd they go on their honeymoon? And as you're starting to open them up, they start to relax a little bit, and they become less, you're selling me to this place. And then we're, in a way, by asking great questions about them, not about whether or not they're incontinent or need med management, It's more about them as people. And now it becomes, we care about you as a person and not define you by your physical, abilities. And I'll never forget someone saying to me, how would you like to be, fast forward, you're 90 years old, you're moving into an assisted living, and they don't say, this is Jayne and she ran a company and she's been successful in her career. No, this is Jayne, she's a fall risk. And that's what people start to define customers as, rather than this is, Fara, and then she's done this incredible job and she's been a scientist or whatever it may be. So I'm really passionate about that, and I think that also permeates through the communities, because now the nurses and the care staff see you as you care about the people, not just I got to move them in. And so I have found in any organization I've worked in, my biggest advocate has been the clinical staff, because they thank God you're finally talking it as a person. So
we talk about person-centered care.
Person-centered care.
It has to start from the first conversation. Now that you're a chief operating officer and have been for a couple of companies now, can you talk about what you find that's different about that relationship, where you were focused on sales and marketing before, but now really running the whole organization? What do you love about it? What has made a difference for you in your own development?
You know what? I think I'm lucky, and I'll tell you why. I think that's a great question. I have the sales foundation, and when you look at sales, right, it's about relationship building, it's about connecting with people. And so I have a nice balance of saying, let's always keep the customer at the core of all our decisions that we make. And so I was in whatever organization I've been at, I've always said, but what about the customer? How are they going to feel about that? How's it going to impact them? So by keeping that core of our employees and our residents and their families, and if they stay at the core of everything we do, we will always do the right thing. And I really believe that. And I'm always focused on bottom line and expense management and revenue generation, but every day I think about what can I do to make that better for the associate? How can I help recognize that associate? Whether it's me calling an executive director on a Sunday afternoon just saying, I'm thinking about you. I haven't talked to you in a little while. How's it going? Just those little things go a long way. One thing that we're really working on in our company is our regional teams are really taking the time to acknowledge caregivers or wait staff or dining staff that have done something really powerful for a customer or for a resident. And one thing that we've done is we said, why don't you just call them? And for a caregiver to get a call at 7:30 at night from a regional director or from myself or from Kevin, my partner, just to say, hey, we heard you did an incredible thing, it goes so far.
It does, and it sounds so simple. I mean, that's our goal with our conversation today. If you're a leader, if you're a executive director or a regional or an area leader, and you're looking to inspire folks, we're talking about recipes for success that sound really simple, but it really takes some discipline to just build it into the 365 of 24/7 caregiving. How do you inspire and keep your team excited and positive? What are some of the culture things that you'd like to do?
Well, a couple of things is one is I make sure that whenever I'm in buildings, and then I really coach and teach the regional teams, that it's about the staff in the building and taking the time to be with the staff and asking them what's working, what's not. We're trying to really create a culture of vulnerability. And I don't know if you've ever read Brene Brown, Dare to Lead.
Yes.
And
I'm so thrilled. You're the first leader we've interviewed to really talk about reference material like this.
Brene Brown talks a lot about empathy and sympathy and creating a culture of where people feel safe, where they are not going to be judged. And we recently did a leadership meeting, and Kevin and myself, we were, quote, on the hot seat, and we actually had our senior leadership team go around, and we had a executive coach who helped facilitate this, and they went around and they had to say one thing they really wanted to change about our leadership. Personally, what could they change about me and what I do, and one thing that they love. And to be very vulnerable, to sit in front of 9 people and have each one of them say, you know what, we really wish you wouldn't do this. But what that said to them is, we're open.
And you are open. I've been through those 360s, if anybody's ever done that, and they're a piece of paper. But the power to be able to sit in vulnerability, it sounds like you found your reference material. What or who did you find mentors along your path? I know there's some significant mentors that are publicly known. Granger Cobb.
Granger was probably my biggest mentor. I actually wrote an article for Senior Housing Forum that I followed Granger to 3 different states so that I could work for him, and I did. And I watched a man that it didn't matter if he walked into a building and it was the housekeeper, the dishwasher, he would smile and hug them, and I just kept saying, that's the leader I want to be. I want people to feel like it's not corporate. We don't even like saying corporate office. We hate that term. We don't want to be, quote, corporate-y. And the other kind of underlying theme is we want to have fun with what we're doing, right? Because it's hard what we do every day. So we're trying to really create a culture of, enhancing the human spirit. That's our mission, to enhance the human spirit, and we want to serve with purpose, and we want to serve with honor, and we want to serve with honesty, and we want to have fun serving. And that's kind of to enhance the human spirit. That is our mission statement, is as simple as that. I think everyone kind of understands that, whether I'm enhancing the human spirit of an associate or a family member or a resident.
I love that.
And if you're serving and you kind of keep that in your mind to say, my job is to enhance the human spirit. It's anyone can provide care.
Right.
It's how can I impact this person's life. So
we were talking offline before we got on, and I know it's a sort of a pet opportunity for us around how do we help young leaders, young women leaders that may say, how do I get to this place? And I know we were saying we really need to step up, and raise your hand. Is there a defining moment for you where you said, I raised my hand to take a new challenge and it really helped propel your career? Is there something you want to share about that experience?
Yeah, I think what I learned over time, and it goes back to good leadership, and Brene Brown will talk about it, is it takes courage to be vulnerable and be able to sit in front of someone and say, you know what? Let me show you what I've accomplished since I've been here. And I think the biggest mistake people make is they know that they're recognized, they know they deserve to be the next level, whether it's a regional or a senior or whatever the career path is. You got to have your facts. And I think if you have your facts and you have confidence to say, you know what, let me show you what I did. You got to have a voice, and this is what I've accomplished, and this is how I grew revenue, whatever the metrics you want to use, and say, I want the challenge. I think I deserve for this next position. I think the other thing that I found that's made my career in the last 25 years is I started to become educated. Not just in sales, but I wanted to know how things worked. Like, wait a minute, I want to make sure I understand the accounting system, because if they don't get the sales in there. So I started to become an expert in a lot of the systems, and because of that, I started to become training other people. And I would stretch and say, okay, I'd be more than happy to help train that new regional. And I didn't ask for anything in return. And what's interesting to me now is I see a different dynamic with some younger associates that want something in return. Like, well, what are you going to give me for that if I help you? And What we're trying to say is, look, if you stretch yourself and you demonstrate to your leaders above that, wow, look what they did. It wasn't like I said, I want more money. I just said, I want to do it because I want to prove that I can do it. And because I did that, it positioned me. And people said, she knows how to do the job.
That is so brilliant. I know I talk a lot about raise your hand for a challenge. Ask your boss, just like we ask our prospects, what's your greatest problem and how can I help you solve it? And I don't know about you, but if I've ever had anybody on my team that says, Fara, what are you finding your greatest challenge? And they help me solve it, I'm definitely going to promote that person, and I'm definitely excited. So I'm really hearing you say what that person has to gain is that invaluable experience, but they have credibility with that senior leadership by stepping up to a challenge.
Yeah.
And then it would be natural to see succession.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I used to say, when I was at Emeritus, we had 43 sets of regionals. So you can imagine 43 regional salespeople. Well, I'll tell you, the ones that I remembered are the ones that were at meetings, that were articulate, that said, I'll test that, I'll try that, and those are the ones that you remember. The people that don't say a word or never volunteer to do anything, you're just a big, little fish in 43 other regional salespeople. And I always remembered the ones that were willing to work the extra hours and said, I'll test that or I'll try that. And again, it takes courage to do that. It shows leadership to say, you know what, it might fail, but you know what? Create the environment. Might fail, so what? We've tried. Let's try it again, or let's try something different. So, I've mentored a lot of people. To this day, I still get emails from, and I just always say, don't make the same dumb mistakes I've made over the years. Let me help you.
Someone that spoke very highly of you and was really excited that you were being considered as chair was two people, but Ken Clare. And Ken Clare worked with you, and he said, one of the things I loved about her is how she would also join me. She would be willing to help create, even if there was a challenge, help support me. And so your leadership came with just this amazing testimonial of someone who worked for you and was inspired by you.
Well, I think I think what happens is most leaders fail because they tell people what to do. And you know what? If they could do it, they would do it. It's like going to a building and saying, get more sales. Well, of course they want more sales. You got to show them how, and you got to roll up your sleeves with them. And, you've got to model for them and watch, and let's do this together, and let's figure out, get them to tell you the answers. What happens is they go in and they say, and that's another thing from an operator, I used to always say to the RDOs, don't expect that you're just going to get people to cut overtime by just telling them to cut overtime. Maybe they don't, and they don't want to tell you they don't know. So you got to kind of figure out, how can I help them without them feeling like I'm failing on this, to say, let me get you some support to help you through the process. Maybe it's a scheduling thing. We don't know how to schedule. So I think assuming everyone knows is a bad mistake.
Well, it is. I know for myself, having to learn a Socratic approach to say, I'm not sure if you've thought about this, but would this possibly work for you? Yeah. This was working in another place I worked with, and I learned something new. And when I start to use that, and it took me till I was about 45 to start using that. So I would say to our listeners and readers, I don't want someone that's 30 to wait till they're 45 to do some of that.
I agree. Don't make the same mistakes. And when here's my lesson one. When you go up from a community level position to a regional level, you don't go in and puff your chest and walk around a building and tell everyone what they're doing wrong. It's the worst mistake. I've made that mistake. All you do is piss everyone off in the building. And I hate to say be blunt, but it's true. It's, how do I go in there and approach it in the way and ask them the right questions to get them to the answer that we know we need to get to. And the problem is, it takes longer and it takes patience. and you want to keep telling them the answer. And I'm probably not the best coach. I work with a lot of other people that are just incredible coaches. They have the patience to really just dig and ask another question until that person goes, I have a great idea. And you go, well, that's wonderful. You lead them to that water. So, but that's one thing, if there's advice for as you're going through the ranks, stay humble. That's one thing. I don't even like saying I'm a chief operating officer. When I go into a building and people ask who I am, I go, I'm Jayne. I'm just here to help. And because I'm uncomfortable, it makes me uncomfortable sometimes because I just want people to feel they can approach me. And the best email I ever got was I went to a building, I think it was Emeritus, and like a week later I got an email from a business office manager. I'll never forget this. And she said, wow, you're just like a regular person.
That was the best compliment.
That was the best compliment, right? Because she didn't see me as this, oh my God, this corporate person's coming into my building. She was like, you're just like a regular person. And I said, that's right. I'm just a regular, I put my socks on just like you do. So that was probably the one thing that, stuck in my mind, to always stay grounded. I think people get a little big heads, and it will really bite you in the long run.
Well, there are days we pick the grapes and there are days we drink the wine, I say, and we never know at what point we're going to do that together. And my excitement is for us to be able to work together. I know we're honored to have Jayne. I hope that the readers and the folks that are watching are going to make comments for us, to reach out to Jayne if you wanted to. Certainly LinkedIn is a good place to reach out to me at fara@seniorhousing.net. And we'd love to hear your comments. We hope this was a valuable opportunity for you to listen and learn, and we want to hear your comments, and we want to continue to grow with our Empower initiative. Thank you, Jayne,
Thank you
so much. It's such a pleasure to be able to work with you. Thank you. Thank you. You were awesome.
This is like free advice for me.